I'm Larry Farber, and let's queer up students and youth culture. Trump Department of Education opens Title IX probe into Smith College over trans-inclusive admissions policy. According to the department's Office for Civil Rights, investigators will examine whether the college violated Title IX protections by, quote, allowing biological males into the women's intimate spaces, end quote. The investigation marks the latest escalation in the Trump administration's efforts to regulate transgender inclusion in higher education. Earlier this year, the administration moved to restrict trans participation in school sports through an executive order threatening federal funding for institutions with trans-inclusive athletic policies. That followed a January 2025 executive order defining gender based on assigned sex at birth and arguing that trans-inclusive interpretations of Title IX harmed women. In a statement to CNN, Smith College said the school is, quote, fully committed to its institutional values, including compliance with civil rights laws, end quote. Founded in 1871, Smith College has a long history tied to gender nonconforming and transgender students. In 2015, the liberal arts college formally adopted a policy allowing trans women to enroll following years of advocacy from students and campus organizers. Today, Smith's admission policy states that all students who identify as women, including, quote, cis, trans, and non-binary women, end quote, are eligible to apply. The department's Office for Civil Rights has warned that if the college is found in violation, it could lose its single-sex status, potentially forcing the school to either admit all students regardless of gender or risk losing access to federal funding. Well, this is a big disappointing story. But I think the light in the story is that the students were polled and they supported having trans students and non-binary students. So there is hope for the future. You know, in my mind, it's sickening that we all here at this table pay taxes in some shape or another, and the discrimination against the trans community and LGBTQI plus community continues. And it's got to change. And, you know, I hope that they can find other alternative funding if they do stick to their guns and lose funding. And that's why we have to, you know, support organizations that speak out and are not afraid, you know, maybe to lose funding, and they have to seek it in alternate ways.
But I thought, isn't Smith College a private college?
But even private colleges get some sort of federal funding for certain programs.
Yeah. Well, something tells me that this is like a retribution tour that illiterate bitch Linda McMahon, with her bachelor's degree in French from Eastern Carolina University, she probably couldn't be a Smith girl. She probably couldn't get into Smith, so now she's getting back at them. I want to be a Smith girl. Yeah, go pour yourself a drink.
You know, there's always, it seems like every generation, you know, there's a boogeyman, you know, in the 1940s, it was, you know, the Jews in Europe, you know, the 1960s, it was the Civil Rights Act. Every generation, it seems as though there is a group of people that is targeted. I think that up until trans rights became as visible as they are now, it was the gay community, you know. It's constantly shifting. I think that the Trump administration has a vendetta against gender nonconforming people. I think it's red meat to the base. I think it's red meat to the Christian fundamentalists. They have a very literal reading of their scripture. A literal and interpretive at the same time, which is kind of counterintuitive because it really doesn't say too much about, you know, gender nonconformity, in their holy books. And it's just, they're probably using an AI algorithm to comb through whatever data they have. Anything that looks like DEI, anything that looks like, anything with any humanity in it is fair game for the administration to slash funding, and they're using the Department of Education as a cudgel and as a weapon to exact political vendettas and to create political outcomes and create a new reality on the ground. Because once things get cut, you know, in this administration, even if we go back to some semblance of normality, whatever that means to us sitting at this table, and that for me, that would mean including everybody, you know, in terms of their civil rights. the reality on the ground is going to be that, for 2 years or 3 years or however much longer this administration has, the reality was on the ground that, transgendered people got excluded. And it's going to be very hard to undo the things that are being done now. And
Intentionally.
once that happens, it's hard to go back.
So this all boils down to power. So you have an administration that is targeting a population that's 1% of the entire population. And so in their mind, it's like, okay, if I go after a school, something large, and I say, I'm taking away your funding unless you don't do this. Now the school is kind of the Sophie's choice. Mm-hmm. I either stand up for that 1% and negate the 99 other percent of the people that go to this school, or whatever the law, all of it is, or I acquiesce and say, I'm sorry, but I have to do this for the greater good of our school. Mm-hmm. And that is what a lot of these rules and regulations on across the board in companies, in schools, they're having to have that choice. They either stand their ground and say, no, we're doing this, or they have to look and make a fiscal, unfortunately, a fiscal decision and go, do we stand up for the 1% or stand up for the 99%, because it might not physically, even though it's a privately funded school or it's a business, it's not right. Unfortunately, when you sit with that position, you have to sit there and look at it, and you second guess your morals compass, because you're like, I either close because I'm going to stand up for this 1%, or I have to make sure that the rest of the, so it's like, you amputate the leg when it's to save the body. Right. And unfortunately, the government knows that. Yeah. The government is using the power. And so they're using that and saying, we have the power over you by picking on the 1%, because it is everything that we do is ruled by money. Yeah. And so now the government's showing, we have power. See what we could do to you just by picking on that one little thing.
Yeah.
Absolute point well taken.
And what a sad commentary. Here we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of our country that was founded on...
And we were the little man.
Yes, and to provide freedom to all that came here.
Yep.
Right.
And here we are now having this conversation.
Yep. And I don't think the government realized or thought that 1% had such a big voice and had more people behind it. They just thought, we're going to pick on that 1%, and they're not going to be, again, it's that power play. They're finding out that there's more people pushing, so that 1% is creeping up to 5%, creeping up to 10%, and that's what we need to do. As long as we keep telling these stories and getting people on that side, then we're tipping the power balance, and then organizations, schools, businesses won't have to make Sophie's choice anymore, because they'll have enough people behind, and we'll be like, no, we're going to alienate now 90%. The 1%'s the one that doesn't like it.
Right. Come be on the right side of history.
Come be on the right side of history. So that's why we're telling these stories.
I like your reading of the dynamics. I don't know that there's a way to gauge if that's really what they're thinking, but I think that could be plausible. I don't think that this administration or, the people that are jockeying for power within the structures of MAGA, I don't think that they're necessarily even caring, even if it tipped to 5%, 10%, 50%. I think that they have strongly held beliefs, as hateful as they might be.
I disagree. I don't think it's anything to do with beliefs. This has everything to do with power.
Yeah, but I think their belief is power. I don't separate those in my mind. I think their power, I think they are raised in a certain structure, in a certain cult-like mentality, if you want to call it that. And I think power is the natural outgrowth. They believe that it is their job to usher in the Armageddon, or to usher in a Christian theocracy. And in order to have the groundwork laid for that, the reality on the ground has to change.
But you have an outcast Kennedy. So how do you explain that?
Well, he has brainworms. Has he had those cured yet? Has he had those cured yet?
But I'm just saying, I honestly
he's
think,
a useful tool.
I honestly think that we have a couple of people that want power, and you have the people that want power who are latching onto it. I hate to say this, but now look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, who flip-flopped. You have so many people who have flip-flopped within their own, what they latch on. And I hate to say this, but even Trump was once a Democrat. So, like, Trump has latched on to whatever will give him the most power and
Yes,
most
of course.
recognition.
And it is
So
power,
all of this is
absolutely,
due with power.
Yeah.
And people will latch on to whoever's the most powerful, and they will go, oh, I never said that, or, oh, I changed my mind.
Yeah.
There's too much of it, and it's happening over and over again. So we need to have enough of us band together to get behind the 1% to switch the power scales.
I agree with you, and point well taken.
Well, there is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.